All right, ready to dive deep. Today, it's Eckhart Tolle and the power of now.
Oh, interesting choice.
Yeah, maybe you're getting ready for a book club or just trying to find a little more peace in your life.
Yeah.
Or, hey, maybe you just want to figure out what this whole enlightenment thing is all about.
I think a lot of people are curious about that these days.
Absolutely. So we're going to break down Tolle's key ideas and, more importantly, see how you can actually use them to, make life a little bit better.
Make life a little bit better, yeah. That's what it's all about. The power of now is really cool because Tolle takes all this ancient spiritual wisdom and makes it work for our crazy modern lives.
I like that. So let's jump right in. Tolle starts off with a pretty bold statement. He says the biggest obstacle to enlightenment is our own minds.
Yeah, that's a tough one to swallow.
It kind of throws you off, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, usually we think of our minds as being helpful, not holding us back.
Yeah, it's a real head scratcher. Tolle says that all that thinking we do, that constant inner monologue, it actually creates a false sense of self, what he calls the ego. And this ego, it's always clinging to thoughts about the past and the future. And that's what causes us so much suffering. It makes us feel separate from, well, everything.
So it's like we're creating our own problems.
In a way, yeah. We're getting in our own way.
He uses this really powerful analogy of a beggar sitting on a box of gold.
Oh, yeah, I love that one.
Me too. The beggar is so caught up in his misery that he doesn't even realize he's sitting on a treasure. It's like we're all walking around with this incredible potential inside us, but we're too busy worrying or dwelling on the past to even notice it.
It's like we're blind to our own riches.
Exactly. It's almost the opposite of that famous saying, I think, therefore I am. Tolle's saying our thinking actually prevents us from experiencing true being, that sense of wholeness and connection that's always available to us.
Yeah, it's a real paradox, isn't it?
It is. So how do we escape this mental trap? Tolle talks about watching the thinker, which I don't know about you, but that sounds a little abstract to me. How do you actually do that?
It does sound kind of out there.
Yeah.
Right. But imagine taking a step back and just noticing your thoughts as they come and go, like clouds passing through the sky.
Okay, I can picture that.
You don't engage with them, judge them, or try to change them. You simply observe. The idea is that by just noticing our thoughts without judgment, we create space for inner stillness and peace. It's like quieting that mental chatter.
So it's not about stopping our thoughts. It's about changing how we relate to them.
That's it. It's a subtle shift, but it makes a huge difference. Tolle actually calls this mental chatter psychological time, meaning it's all about dwelling on the past or worrying about the future, which are just thoughts, not reality.
Like having radio blaring all the time.
Yeah.
No wonder we can't hear our own inner wisdom. I know I'm constantly planning, worrying, replaying conversations in my head. It really never stops.
Oh yeah, I know that feeling. It's like our minds are on overdrive. But the good news is we can learn to turn down the volume.
Okay, so how do we do that? Have you figured out how to turn off the mental radio?
It's definitely a practice, not a one-time fix. But Tolle says the key is shifting our focus from all that mental noise to the present moment, the now. The past and future, they only exist in our minds. They're not real in the same way that this present moment is. And that can be a tough one to wrap our heads around. Yeah, it's a total shift in perspective.
So by focusing on the now, we can actually, dissolve problems and suffering, because they kind of need time to exist, right?
Yeah.
In the present moment, well, it's timeless.
That's exactly it. Problems need time to exist. So Tolle gives us these techniques to tap into the power of the now. One is simply noticing when your mind is trying to escape the present moment.
Like catch it red-handed.
Exactly. And then another one is to gently guide your attention back to what's happening right now.
It's like training a puppy.
Yeah, kind of. Our minds wander off and we gently guide them back to the present moment.
I like that. So how do we actually do that? What are some practical ways to shift our focus to the now?
Well, one of the simplest but most powerful things you can do is regularly ask yourself, what's going on inside me at this moment?
So just check in.
Yeah. It's not about overanalyzing. It's more about just noticing your thoughts, emotions, and bodily sensations.
Okay, so we're not trying to stop our thoughts or emotions. We're just becoming aware of them without getting, carried away by them.
Exactly.
That makes sense. Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting for me. Tolle says the body, something we often think of as separate from our spiritual selves, is actually a gateway to being present.
The body is a gateway. Yeah. How does that work?
It's a pretty radical idea,
Mhm.
especially compared to a lot of traditional spiritual teachings that focus on, transcending the body. But Tolle sees the body, specifically what he calls the inner body, as an essential part of our spiritual journey.
So not our physical body, but not just the physical body now. Like, he's talking about the energy field within. Think of it as a doorway to a deeper level of awareness.
Okay, so we're talking about connecting with that subtle energy that's always present within us. Not our physical body, but that inner aliveness that's harder to describe. I can see how that could help us be more grounded and present, but how do we actually do it?
Tully encourages us to actually feel the body from within, become aware of the sensations, the energy, the aliveness that's present in every cell. He describes the inner body as a direct link to what he calls the unmanifested, the source of all creation.
The unmanifested. That sounds pretty deep.
It is. It's like, well, think of it as this universal energy field that connects us all.
So by connecting with our inner body, we're tapping into that universal energy field, that sense of oneness with everything.
Exactly. And he even provides some simple exercises. For example, you can bring your attention to the sensations of your breath. Notice the rise and fall of your chest, the coolness of the air as you inhale. It's a simple way to shift your awareness from the mental chatter to the present moment, to your inner body, to that deeper sense of being.
Okay, so just paying attention to the breath can help us connect with that inner body.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a simple but powerful practice.
I'm definitely going to try that. Okay, let's dive into another big idea. Happiness versus inner peace. So Tolle says that happiness and inner peace aren't the same thing.
Right, they're often confused.
So what's the difference?
Most of us chase happiness, right?
Yeah.
But it's often fleeting and it depends on things going our way. Inner peace, though, comes from a totally different place. It's a deep sense of stillness and acceptance no matter what's happening around us.
So it's not about everything being perfect. It's about finding that calm within the storm.
Okay.
And that's where the idea of surrender comes in, right? It's about accepting what is, even the tough stuff. But Tolle says that suffering, even though we don't want to seek it out, can actually help us grow.
Yeah, it's kind of a paradox.
It is. How is that possible?
It sounds strange, I know. But sometimes facing those tough times, like loss or failure, well, it forces us to confront the things we've been clinging to, you know? It can be painful, but it can also shatter those illusions that keep us from seeing the bigger picture.
It's like we have to let go of the old, outdated versions of ourselves to make space for something new and more authentic to emerge.
Exactly. It's like a shedding of the old skin.
I like that. So we're not trying to create suffering, but when it inevitably arises, we can see it as an opportunity to learn and grow.
Yeah, it's about shifting our perspective on suffering. Instead of seeing it as something to avoid at all costs, we can embrace it as a potential teacher.
Okay, that makes sense. But you mentioned choice. How do we actually make conscious choices when it feels like we're just reacting to things all the time?
That's where becoming aware of our unconscious patterns comes in. Tolle says that true choice requires a high level of awareness. Until we understand the underlying beliefs and patterns that drive our actions, we're not really choosing. We're just reacting based on, old programming.
It's like those times when you say or do something you later regret and you think, where did that come from? It's like some unconscious part of us is running the show.
Exactly. And that's where forgiveness becomes so important.
Forgiveness.
Yeah, not forgiveness in the traditional sense of like condoning something, but forgiveness as a way to free ourselves from the grip of the past.
So it's about releasing the energy we've attached to past events. Whether we're holding on to anger, resentment, or even guilt, it's about recognizing that the past is gone and it has no power over us in this present moment.
Beautifully put. True forgiveness, according to Tolle, allows us to step out of those old stories and experience the freedom of the now. It's not about blaming ourselves or others. It's about reclaiming our power from the mind, from the ego's need to be right.
Okay, I'm starting to get this. It's like we're all carrying around these heavy backpacks full of past hurts and regrets. Forgiveness is like taking those things out of the backpack and finally letting them go.
That's a great way to visualize it. And when we forgive ourselves and others, we create space for more peace, joy, and even love to enter our lives.
So true. This has been such an insightful conversation. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of the power of now. What's one thing you'd like our listeners to take away from this deep dive?
I think the biggest takeaway is that the power of the now is available to everyone right here, right now. It's not something you have to earn or achieve. It's just about shifting your awareness, your perspective.
It's like we already have the key, we just have to remember to use it.
Exactly. It's not about adding anything new to your life. It's about letting go of what's already there.
Letting go of the baggage, the old stories, the limiting beliefs.
Exactly. And when we do that, when we surrender to the present moment, we open ourselves up to a whole new way of experiencing life. A life that's more joyful, more peaceful, more fulfilling.
I like that. And something we haven't really touched on yet is the idea of relationships. Tolle talks about how our relationships can actually be a spiritual practice, can't they?
Oh, absolutely.
But it's not always easy, is it?
Relationships can be one of the most challenging, but also the most rewarding areas to practice presence.
So how do we bring the power of now into our relationships? I mean, how do we deal with conflict, with those times when we feel hurt or angry?
It all comes back to awareness. When we're triggered in a relationship, the first step is to notice that we've been hooked, that our ego has taken over. Instead of reacting automatically, we can pause, take a breath, and create some space.
That's a good reminder. Create some space. So instead of reacting, we respond.
Exactly. And that space allows us to choose how we want to respond. We can choose to react from our ego, which will usually lead to more conflict, or we can choose to respond from a place of presence and compassion.
And that can be tough when you're in the heat of the moment.
It is. It takes practice. But remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about being aware and making conscious choices. Even if we slip up, even if we react from our ego sometimes, we can always come back to the present moment and start again.
So it's about progress, not perfection.
Yeah.
I like that. What about forgiveness in relationships? That seems really hard sometimes.
It can be. But Tolle reminds us that forgiveness isn't about condoning someone's actions. It's about freeing ourselves from the pain of the past. It's about choosing peace over resentment.
So even if someone has hurt us deeply, we can still choose to forgive them for our own sake.
Exactly. Forgiveness is a gift we give ourselves. It doesn't mean we forget what happened or that we condone the behavior. It just means we choose to release the negative energy we've been holding on to.
That makes sense. And I imagine that can be really liberating.
It is. It's like taking a huge weight off our shoulders, and it allows us to move forward in our relationships with more lightness and compassion.
Okay, this has been such an incredible deep dive. I'm already feeling inspired to apply these ideas to my own life.
Me too. It's amazing how just talking about these concepts can shift our energy and open up new possibilities.
It really is. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today. And thanks to all of you for joining us on this deep dive into the power of now. We hope you found it as insightful and inspiring as we did. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.